Amara was the kind of girl people remembered for her kindness. She grew up in Lusaka, Zambia, with a warm smile that made even strangers feel like friends. She was soft-spoken, gentle, and always the first to help someone in need. But behind her kindness, she carried a quiet insecurity that only a few people knew. One of those people was her boyfriend, Kweku, a young man from Ghana. Instead of protecting her heart, he made a habit of teasing her, often in front of others. At first, Amara brushed it off, thinking he was just joking. But the jokes never stopped. Whenever they were with friends, he would make sly comments about her looks. Sometimes he compared her to other women. Sometimes he laughed at her style. Each time, she forced a smile, even as her chest tightened with pain. One evening, at a lively gathering with music, food, and laughter, Kweku took the teasing too far. Surrounded by friends, he leaned back in his chair, grinning, and said loudly, "Amara? She's too ugly to cheat on. No man would want her." The words hit like a slap. Everyone around them burst out laughing, clapping, and shaking their heads as if it were the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Amara tried to laugh along, but her throat felt dry and her eyes burned. She sat quietly, her smile frozen, while inside her heart shattered into pieces. In that moment, the girl who always lifted others felt completely invisible. That night, when the laughter had faded and the gathering was over, Amara walked home with her head low. She replayed Kweku's words in her mind like a cruel echo she couldn't turn off. Too ugly to cheat on, no man would want her. Each time she heard it again in her head, it cut deeper. By the time she reached her room, her chest felt heavy, and tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. She closed the door behind her and let herself cry quietly. Not the loud kind of crying, but the kind where you bury your face in a pillow so no one else hears. She had never felt so humiliated. The man she loved, the man she stood by, had made her pain into a joke. The people she thought were friends had laughed at her heartbreak as if it were entertainment. As the tears rolled, her mind wandered back to all the sacrifices she had made for Kweku. She remembered the nights she stayed up helping him with assignments when he was struggling in school. She thought of the money she had lent him when he was broke, even when it meant skipping her own needs. She thought about how she stood by him when his small business was falling apart, pushing him forward with encouragement, even investing her own savings to help him stay afloat. Amara had been more than a girlfriend. She had been his supporter, his cheerleader, his safe place. She had loved him in ways that went beyond words. Yet here she was, alone in her room, crying because he had used her insecurities to entertain others. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, staring at the ceiling in the dark. A question burned inside her. Why? Why did her love feel like a burden to him? Why was her loyalty answered with insults? Why did he look at her like she wasn't enough, when she had given him everything she could? The sadness weighed on her, but underneath it, something else stirred, confusion mixed with anger. She wasn't angry at him yet, not fully. But she was angry at herself for allowing him to treat her this way. She thought back to the girl she used to be, full of dreams, full of light, before she gave so much of herself away. The tears kept coming, soft and endless. That night, Amara learned the cruel truth. Sometimes the person you sacrifice the most for is the one who wounds you the deepest. She hugged her pillow tighter, trying to quiet her sobs, but her heart was wide awake, breaking piece by piece. In the silence of her room, she felt smaller than she ever had before, not knowing that this moment of pain would one day become the seed of her strength. The next morning, Amara woke up with swollen eyes. She tried to go about her day as if nothing had happened, but inside, she felt hollow. Her best friend Nia noticed immediately. Nia had always been the one person who could see through Amara's smile. That evening, when Amara finally opened up about what Kweku had said at the gathering, Nia's face tightened with anger. "Amara, you can't keep letting him do this to you," Nia said firmly. "You're giving this man everything, and he's giving you nothing but pain. You deserve so much better." Amara wiped her eyes, shaking her head. "But I love him, Nia. I've sacrificed so much. How do I just walk away?" Nia took her hand. "Love should never cost you your dignity. If someone truly loves you, they lift you up, they don't tear you down. You're too strong, too smart, too valuable to sit here crying over a man who doesn't even see your worth." Those words struck something deep inside Amara. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Nia's advice, and she thought about all the times she had stayed silent while Kweku mocked her. A quiet realization washed over her. She couldn't keep living like this. Crying over him wouldn't change him, but changing herself could change everything. The next day, Amara made a decision. She wouldn't waste another tear on Kweku. She wouldn't beg him to see her value. Instead, she would rise. She pulled out her laptop and opened her planner, the same one she used when she dreamed of being more than just someone's girlfriend. Amara had always been good with technology and creativity. She was a natural at digital marketing. She had put her dreams on hold to support Kweku, but now she decided to put herself first. She began signing up for online courses, attending free webinars, and reading books about branding and strategy. She stayed up late building her portfolio, polishing her skills, and setting new goals. Each night, instead of crying into her pillow, she poured her energy into her work. Slowly, she started to feel a shift inside her. Her confidence, though fragile, was beginning to rebuild. Amara didn't tell Kweku about her decision. She kept it quiet, her own secret plan. She smiled when he made his usual jokes, but in her heart, she whispered to herself, "One day, you'll regret every word you said to me." It wasn't revenge she wanted, it was respect. She wanted to prove, not just to him but to herself, that she was more than his insults. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. The girl who once cried herself to sleep was now choosing to rise, step by step, into the woman she was always meant to be. Amara's days began to look different. Instead of sitting around waiting for Kweku's attention, she started pouring that energy into herself. She began small, with simple acts of self-care. She took morning walks, ate healthier meals, and spent time journaling her thoughts. She treated herself with the kindness she had been giving to everyone else. At first, it felt strange, but slowly it became her new normal. She also started exploring workshops in Lusaka, networking events, business seminars, and women's empowerment sessions. At each one, she listened closely, took notes, and practiced introducing herself with confidence. She wasn't just learning skills, she was teaching herself to stand tall again. She started upgrading her wardrobe too, not to impress Kweku or anyone else, but to reflect how she wanted to feel inside, strong, modern, and elegant. When she looked in the mirror, she began to see a woman who was changing. Her effort didn't take long to show results. She built a small but impressive portfolio and started attracting clients for her digital marketing services. At first, they were local businesses, but her creativity stood out. Soon, an unexpected opportunity came. A company in Nairobi reached out after seeing her work on. They wanted her to handle a major campaign. Amara was shocked, nervous, but also thrilled. This was the kind of chance she had once dreamed about, and now it was real. Traveling to Nairobi felt like a fresh chapter. The meetings were intense, but Amara shined. She presented her ideas with confidence, mixing her natural charm with her sharp skills. People admired how she carried herself, how she spoke with both grace and authority. What Kweku had always dismissed as nothing special, strangers now praised as brilliance. Some complimented her intelligence, others her beauty and presence. Everywhere she went, she was seen in ways she had never been seen before. When the deal was finalized, she walked out of that office with tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from pride. She realized that all the words that once broke her were now powerless. She was building herself, piece by piece, into someone unstoppable. Back home, she kept growing. She updated her social media with her projects, shared tips about digital branding, and soon people began reaching out to her for mentorship. The girl who once cried quietly in her room was now inspiring others without even trying. Amara's confidence wasn't built overnight, but every small choice added up. And with each new milestone, she carried a quiet thought in her heart. He never saw me. But the world does. For the first time, she didn't need Kweku's validation. She had found something far greater, her own. While Amara was quietly rebuilding her life, Kweku remained blind to the changes happening right in front of him. In his mind, nothing had shifted. He still believed he had complete control over her, the same way he always had. To his friends, he bragged endlessly. "Amara will never leave me," he would say with a smug grin. "She's too lucky to have me. She should be grateful I even chose her." His friends laughed along, not realizing he was boasting about the very woman who was slowly outgrowing him. Kweku's arrogance grew worse with time. At parties, he no longer bothered to hide his flirting. He whispered into other women's ears, offered them drinks, and even danced too close for comfort, all while Amara sat quietly nearby. To him, her silence meant weakness. He thought her loyalty was permanent, that she would always put up with his behavior because she needed him. What he didn't know was that her silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy. Amara was no longer hurt by his games. She was too busy focusing on her own future to waste emotions on his immaturity. One night at another crowded party, Kweku went too far again. Surrounded by his circle of friends, he smirked and pointed at Amara, saying loudly, "This one? She could never survive without me. She's too plain. No man would even notice her if I wasn't around." Laughter exploded across the room, just like before. Everyone thought it was just another one of Kweku's jokes. But this time, something was different. Amara didn't flinch. She didn't force a smile or hide her tears. She sat calmly, her posture straight, her face unbothered. If anyone had looked closely, they would have seen the quiet fire in her eyes. What Kweku didn't know was that earlier that week, she had just signed a major deal in Nairobi. She was preparing to travel again, to bigger spaces and brighter stages. Her world was expanding while his was shrinking, though he was too arrogant to notice. Kweku continued to brag and mock, but the foundation he thought was unshakable was already cracking beneath him. His friends, who once laughed easily at his jokes, were beginning to see glimpses of Amara's growth. They noticed her polished style, the way she carried herself differently, the subtle glow of confidence she now wore. Some even whispered among themselves that Kweku was blind, that he didn't realize the treasure he was losing right in front of him. Still, Kweku laughed the loudest, drunk on his own pride. He had no idea that the woman he mocked was already rising above him. He had no clue that soon the same friends he bragged to would be the ones sharing Amara's success stories online, calling her an inspiration. And when that day came, Kweku would finally understand what he had thrown away. But for now, in his ignorance, he kept mocking the very woman who was becoming untouchable. Amara's hard work was beginning to open doors she had once only dreamed of. One afternoon, while checking her emails, she froze when she saw an invitation with her name on it. She had been asked to attend a high-profile business gala in Johannesburg, South Africa. The event was known for bringing together some of the most powerful entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators across the continent. Not only was she invited, but she had also been chosen to give a short speech on women in business. For a moment, Amara sat staring at the screen, her hands trembling. Just a year ago, she had been crying in her room over Kweku's insults. Now, she was being given a stage that could change everything. The weeks leading up to the gala were a whirlwind. Amara worked on her speech carefully, making sure her words were simple but strong. She wanted every woman who heard her to feel seen, especially those who had been overlooked or underestimated like she once was. She also decided to invest in herself fully for the event. She chose an elegant gown, one that hugged her figure perfectly but still carried grace. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The girl who once doubted her worth was gone. In her place stood a confident woman ready to shine. When Amara arrived in Johannesburg, the gala venue sparkled with lights and luxury. Expensive cars lined the entrance, photographers snapped pictures, and the air buzzed with excitement. As she stepped out of her car and walked inside, heads began to turn. People whispered, curious about the woman with poise, style, and a glow that couldn't be ignored. For the first time, Amara felt not just present but powerful. When it was her turn to speak, the room fell silent. Amara stood at the podium, her heart racing, but her voice steady. She spoke about the struggles women face in business, how often they are dismissed, underestimated, or told they are not enough. She shared her own story, without naming names, about being mocked and overlooked, and how she chose to rise instead of breaking. Her words were raw, honest, and full of hope. By the time she finished, the audience erupted in applause, many standing to cheer her. What Amara didn't know was that someone in the audience had recorded her entire speech and uploaded it online. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. By the next morning, her video was trending across multiple platforms. Comments poured in from women across Africa, thanking her for speaking their truth. Journalists called her the new face of African women in business. In just a few days, Amara's name became known far beyond Lusaka. Opportunities flooded in, partnerships, interviews, and invitations. She had officially stepped into the spotlight as a rising star. The same woman once mocked as too ugly to cheat on was now the one people looked up to, admired, and celebrated. Amara's big break had arrived, and it was only the beginning. The photos from the Johannesburg gala spread faster than Amara could have ever imagined. One moment she was stepping off the stage, her heart still pounding from the applause, and the next, her face was all over social media. Elegant shots of her in the stunning gown, smiling with confidence, and standing alongside powerful business leaders went viral. People who had never heard her name before were suddenly calling her an inspiration. Headlines described her as the queen who rose from the ashes of insult. Back in Lusaka, and even in Ghana, Kweku's friends couldn't believe what they were seeing. The same Amara they used to watch him mock at parties now looked like someone untouchable, someone who belonged to another world. They shared her photos in group chats, shaking their heads and laughing at Kweku's stupidity. "Bro, you really let her slip away?" one of them teased. "She's a queen now, and you were busy making jokes." At first, Kweku tried to brush it off. He told his friends, "Don't be fooled. That's just makeup and lights. I know the real Amara." But deep down, he was unsettled. The woman in those photos didn't look like someone desperate for his approval. She looked like someone who had outgrown him completely. As the days passed, the teasing from his friends grew harsher. They tagged him under her photos, leaving laughing emojis and comments like, "You're lost, bro," and imagine calling her ugly. Some even began to admire her openly, praising her beauty and her success. Kweku felt his pride cracking. The same group that once laughed at his cruel jokes was now mocking him instead. For the first time, he felt panic rise inside him. He replayed every insult he had ever thrown at her. Every time he laughed while she held back tears. He realized how blind he had been. The woman he had dismissed as too plain was now being celebrated as one of the brightest rising stars in Africa. She had turned her pain into power, and the world was watching. Meanwhile, Amara stayed focused on her journey. She noticed the sudden wave of attention online, but carried herself with calm grace. She wasn't interested in proving anything to Kweku. She was living for herself now. Yet, deep down, she knew he must have seen it. She knew the same words he once used to humiliate her were now haunting him every time her photos appeared on his screen. The tables had turned completely. Kweku was no longer the man laughing at Amara. He was the man everyone laughed at for letting her go. And nothing stung his pride more than realizing the woman he thought would never leave him had already left him far behind. The queen he once mocked had risen, and the whole world was cheering her on. It was a bright morning when Amara walked into her office, her schedule packed with meetings and calls. She had grown used to the busyness of her new life, the emails piling in with opportunities from across Africa. But nothing could have prepared her for the surprise waiting in her lobby. Sitting nervously in one of the chairs was Kweku. He looked nothing like the confident man who once bragged about her never leaving him. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes tired, and his smile forced as he stood up quickly when he saw her. "Amara," he said, his voice shaky. "I just wanted to talk." Amara didn't flinch. She gave him a polite nod and led him into her office, the same office he had once mocked her for dreaming about. He sat down across from her, fidgeting with his hands. I'm sorry," he began. "I know I've hurt you. I didn't mean those things I said. I was just joking, you know me." Amara leaned back in her chair, calm and composed. Her eyes held none of the desperation he was hoping for. "Do I?" she asked softly. "Do I really know you, Kweku? Because the man I knew was the one who told me I was too ugly to cheat on. Do you remember that?" The words hung in the air like a knife. Kweku's face crumbled. He tried to laugh it off at first, but the weight of her calm tone crushed his defenses. His eyes filled with tears, and before long, he was crying openly in her office. "Amara, please. I was a fool. I didn't mean it. I was just insecure. I didn't know how to handle a woman like, please give me another chance." But Amara didn't move. She watched him, her face steady, her heart surprisingly unshaken. Once upon a time, seeing Kweku cry would have broken her too. She would have rushed to comfort him, to remind him of her love. But now she only saw the truth. His tears weren't about her pain, they were about his loss. He slid to the edge of his chair, reaching for her hands. "I can change, I swear. You're everything I need, Amara. Don't leave me like this. I can't live without you." His voice cracked, and his tears soaked his shirt. Amara gently pulled her hands back, keeping her composure. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to argue. The power was in her silence, in her calm strength. For the first time, Kweku felt what she had felt so many times before, small, helpless, and unworthy. The man who once mocked her in front of friends was now begging on the edge of her desk, desperate for the woman he had thrown away. And Amara, steady as ever, knew the choice was already made. Kweku's tears fell harder, his voice breaking as he begged, but Amara stayed still, her face calm. For a long moment, she simply looked at him, almost as if she was seeing a stranger. Then, with a steady voice, she said, "Kweku, it's too late." The words hit him harder than any insult ever could. He froze, his mouth half open, his eyes wide. "What do you mean too late?" he whispered. Amara leaned forward slightly, her tone clear and controlled. "Do you remember the night you told everyone I was too ugly to cheat on? Do you remember how they laughed while I sat there holding back tears? That night broke something in me, but it also lit a fire I didn't know I had. Your words pushed me to rebuild myself. Every cruel joke, every insult, you thought they made me small, but they made me stronger. They reminded me I didn't need your approval to matter." Kweku shook his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. "Amara, no. I was stupid. I didn't mean it. I thought you'd always stay. Please, I can change. I can be better for you." She gave him a sad smile, the kind that carried both pain and power. "I don't need you to be better for me. I needed you to respect me when I was at my lowest, and you chose to tear me down instead. You don't get to cry now that I've risen. You don't get to want me only after the world sees what you never could." Kweku buried his face in his hands, sobbing. His shoulders shook as he muttered, "I lost you. I lost you." Amara stood up from her chair, her heels clicking softly against the floor as she walked toward the door. She paused for a moment, turning back to him one last time. "No, Kweku, you didn't lose me. You threw me away. And now you're realizing too late what you had." With that, she opened the office door. The sight was almost cinematic, Amara walking out with her head held high while Kweku collapsed into the lobby chair, crying uncontrollably. Staff and clients passing by whispered, stunned at the sight of the once arrogant man now broken and begging. Amara didn't look back. Her heart wasn't heavy anymore. She had carried enough pain for both of them, and now she was free. Each step she took away from him was a step into the life she had built for herself. Behind her, Kweku sobbed into his hands, the sound echoing in the lobby like the ending of a tragedy he had written for himself. The woman he mocked, belittled, and underestimated had walked away forever, and for the first time, he finally understood. His arrogance had destroyed the best thing in his life. After everything she had been through, Amara decided it was time to share her story, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been belittled, mocked, or made to feel small. She posted a video online, sitting in her home office, speaking directly and honestly to the camera. She talked about the pain of Kweku's insults, the nights she cried quietly, and the moment she decided to rise. She didn't sugarcoat her journey. She shared the raw truth, the struggles, and the small victories that led her to where she was. The response was overwhelming. Women from across Africa wrote to her, thanking her for giving them courage, for showing them that it was possible to take control of their lives even after heartbreak. Inspired by the messages flooding in, Amara created a foundation dedicated to supporting women who faced emotional abuse. The foundation offered mentorship, counseling, and skill-building workshops, giving women tools to rebuild themselves and regain their confidence. Her story spread like wildfire online. Social media buzzed with headlines. The girl he called ugly became the woman he could never deserve. Articles, blogs, and videos celebrated her courage, her transformation, and her rise from humiliation to influence. Amara became a symbol of strength and resilience, showing that a painful past didn't define one's future. Through it all, she carried one message clearly: cruel words can either break you or build you. The choice is yours. Amara's journey proved that the pain inflicted by others can be turned into power, that self-love and determination can transform life's harshest moments into triumph. And so, the girl who once hid her tears became the woman who inspired thousands, a living reminder that true strength comes from choosing yourself, rising above cruelty, and turning your story into a force for change.